Disappointing their parents is one of the main reasons they choose not to drink or use drugs. Visit talknowaz.com because while you might worry you aren't getting through, you are. Keep it up and stay up to date about the latest Arizona drug trends at talknowaz.com. This message is sponsored by the Substance Abuse Coalition Leaders of Arizona.
A new app called Sportrade is coming to Arizona to make in-play bets instantly. No more spinny wheel. Search Sportrade Wells to see the great prices Sportrade players are getting in real time.
If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP.
KQFN Tempe. Also transmitting on K257CD Phoenix at 99.3 FM and K240 EU Mountain Hills at 95.9 FM. Wherever you go, take us along. Listen to our live stream on our free Fanatic app. Download it today.
Here we go. Another day, hopefully another bunch of dollars for you. This is Beat the Book, broadcasting live from the Harmon Solar Studios here at 1580 The Fanatic in sunny uptown Scottsdale. Loaded show for you today. Obviously, a lot of NFL stuff to get into. We had Dolphins, Bills last night. In some ways, the game went like you thought. In other ways, not so much. So we'll get to the good, the bad, and the ugly of that. We've got a check-in with our guy, Alex Kane, CEO of Sportrade, new betting app coming to Arizona, here to change some things up. And we'll also get to some of the betting picks of the day. I'm Keon Rose, alongside me, Dylan Cohen. And you guys are on the Fanatic text line, 888-368-1580. And Dylan, who powers the show?
The Sportrade, as you mentioned, and stick around for the second segment of Beat the Book today. Alex Kane will be joining us, and we're going to just have another chat about all the amazing features that Sportrade offers that really makes it stand out amongst all the other sports books that are here in Arizona right now. And we're going to get some insights directly from the CEO of a sports book about what kind of action they saw yesterday. We had a weird scenario where between professional, NFL football and at the college level, you have these two primetime matchups, and we had our picks with both. And in each case, the underdog ended up winning. So I'm curious to hear from Alex, how did the book come out? Because I know for me personally, anything that I put on the Dolphins yesterday or to passing props, that died. I flat out lost. And it was looking like it was going to be a not very good night, and one where the book actually beat me. But our very own Arizona State Sun Devils had a really incredible showing on the road. They were able to rally down 21-7 to come back and defeat the Texas State Bobcats. Final score was 31-28. And I happened to, bet this game straight, before, and I took advantage of ASU being priced as, even money plus 100 on the money line, which, we said yesterday was pretty good value. It seemed like they were, going to be the better team in this matchup. And then during the game, when the score got to 21-7 in the second quarter, I happened to notice the live line on Arizona State jump all the way up above 5-1. So I happened to put another wager down at plus 520, and those two bets combined ended up winning, and they covered everything I lost on the Dolphins and that whole debacle of a game.
So you broke even.
So,
and that's where it pays, by the way, to pay attention to the games after you place your bets. I was caught sleeping at the wheel because I was at the gym. And so I didn't get to move on that because I wouldn't have panicked there. I think I would have doubled down if I had seen it.
And that was something where, at least in my opinion, like you really had to kind of see the whole game up until that point and see the way that, ASU, fought in the first quarter. Texas State started with the ball. ASU got them to, turn it over pretty quickly. The first drive from Texas State was like a 3-and-out. So, ASU quickly gets the ball. They charge down the field. They score first. So, from there, Texas State started to kind of figure out the ASU defense a little bit. Jordan McLeod had Pretty solid performance for Texas State. He threw for 268 yards. He had 4 passing touchdowns. So he was definitely a very tough test, a very experienced veteran quarterback at the collegiate level. So that was certainly a good test for, ASU and the defense. And, shout out to Kenny Dillingham. I mean, that required, a very strong culture, keeping everyone bought in, when things weren't going their way. And Arizona State, rose above. They managed to tie the game at halftime, and pretty much from there, the second half. Still a very close matchup, but ASU really seemed to have the upper hand. The defense was aggressive. They got stops when they needed to, and talk about Sam Leavitt for a second too.
Yeah, Sam Leavitt was having a day.
Oh my gosh! I mean, ASU. This has to be one of the best quarterback dynamics that they've now found themselves in quite a little while. I mean, yes, they had Jaden Daniels for some time, but
they I know a lot of it was a lack of player development, but they didn't have Heisman Jaden Daniels, and so there's a difference there. I'm not saying Sam Leavitt is like Heisman candidate kind of guy, but he's a freshman. Over the course of a career, could he become that kind of player? I'm not taking that off the table.
I honestly, he reminds me a lot of I don't know if you recall like Taylor Kelly, because Taylor Kelly was a guy that didn't, go on to the NFL and see a whole lot of success there. But within the Sun Devil program, I mean, he was a 4-year player, and, he gave the program stability. This is all the way back in the Todd Graham years. But, we benefited from having just a solid, stable, very capable starting quarterback that, could give ASU a chance on any given Saturday. And there's so many impacts of that. I mean, recruiting benefits from just projecting that stability. And, ASU has a lot of work to do to, kind of flip the narrative. Herm Edwards, for all the good things he did for the program, he left it in a pretty bad state. And so, Kenny Dillingham has had his work cut out for him, and he is doing a fantastic job. I don't think many people expected ASU to be 3-0 at this point.
I didn't. And I was one of the people that thought that ASU was going to have a really good season. And I still didn't see 3-0 coming to start the year. They're ahead of schedule as far as the kind of season they want to have.
And I mean, certainly not deserving of, being voted as the worst team
in the Big 12.
Big 12.
Which seemed unfair even at the time. But to be fair, it's the first time you're going to Big 12 Media Days. This thing is voted on by the writers of the Big 12, and it's a new Big 12. They're not familiar with any of these other programs that just came in and joined their conference. They're used to covering Texas and Oklahoma. Well, they're gone. You're not necessarily used to covering Arizona and covering Arizona State. So you're kind of between a rock and a hard place. You just saw the record for ASU last year. Maybe you saw the outcome of some of those games, and you're inclined to believe that it probably repeats itself. In most cases, you'd be right. But like you mentioned, Kenny Dillingham coming in, he changes the culture. He is a much better recruiter. He does like using the transfer portal. He does have a connection with his players that, for whatever reason, Herm Edwards just didn't have. And it showed up on the field. Every single one of those things showed up on game day yesterday.
And I don't know if you happen to see that whole thing that happened on the ESPN broadcast where, like the game initially ended. They started to do this interview with Kenny Dillingham, and then they're notifying Dillingham, like, in this interview, that the game isn't actually over and they're about to put one more second on the clock. And he's just like, like, what the hell? Like, this can't be serious. Yeah. What is going on?
Am I getting punked today, or what's going on?
And then, they go back on the field. Texas State, I mean, they didn't really have a real chance. They had 1 second to try and run a play and do something. It didn't go anywhere. ASU snuffed that out. So then Dillingham comes back onto the broadcast, and he ended up using the famous Marshawn Lynch. I am just here so that I don't get fined. This was ridiculous. Those were his exact words. Now, that is a coach that showed fire when he needed to. And I've got an issue right now with a coach who last night did not show some fire when I felt like he needed to. And we talked a little bit about this before the show.
But before we get there, real quick, a couple of things. One, I forgot to show you this before the show. It is so Yahoo Sports has a win probability meter that they keep, track of over the course of the game. And then they show you, it stays on there even when the game's done. So you can see how the game was going. It starts ASU, it dips down to Texas State, and then it gradually goes back up to ASU at around halftime. Then when you get to about, where they're tied 21-21 with 6:20 to go in the third quarter, it jumps back down to Texas State before moments later jumping up to ASU. And then it's like an EKG machine when someone is just having a heart attack. It's just up and down the entire rest of the way till the end of the game.
That's how you know it was actually
It was a really good game.
Fun, good game.
Yeah. So first off, hats off to Texas State and Jordan McLeod and all of their players. They showed up and they played very well. And I do think that, ASU, I thought ASU was going to win. At no point did I think that ASU was going to lose, but they had to work for that one.
Definitely. And shout out to, the Sun Devil faithful that traveled all the way to Texas. Cause they were apparent on the broadcast. You could hear the ASU chants. They definitely showed, the section of the fans that they were able to bring all the way to Texas for that. So
I used to live in San Antonio, Texas. So I can tell you, because San Marcos is maybe an hour east of San Antonio, Texas. That's 13 hours away from here by car. So for the fans to be out there, to be supportive, to be loud and proud on TV, that's some good news. You like to see that.
It's dedication. Now, talking about a coach that did not show any fire yesterday, and this is something that frustrated me a bit because as I said on the show yesterday, and as I wagered on the Thursday night football game, I was very big on the Dolphins. Felt like this was going to be the game that they were really going to just turn the tables on the Bills. The Bills have very largely dominated this matchup. I wasn't familiar with Josh Allen's record of just being the owner of the day of Thursday. He's never lost a Thursday game in his entire
Josh
career.
Allen, the mayor of Thursdays.
They might as well just call it Josh Allen Thursdays from now on. It's pretty unbelievable just to have that record in general. But we saw how this game played out yesterday, and obviously a very unfortunate situation with Tua, taking that concussion,
another concussion in his career.
And that's a whole other conversation to be had. But, in this case, I was very frustrated by A, the play calling, and B, just kind of the body language of Mike McDaniel as he's standing there so passively on the sidelines with his team down 24-7 in the second quarter. And they're, driving and trying to score to, try and bring this game a little closer and make it a 2-score game. And, we talked a little bit about this. Everyone's got different coaching styles. Mike McDaniel is very notoriously laid back. He's not generally
like Andy Reid is too. Like if the Chiefs are down 24-7, like you're not, camera cuts to Andy Reid, you're not going to see him screaming at anybody on the sideline or anything like that. He's going to be walking around there.
You'll see Kelsey going up to Andy Reid to scream at him, if anything.
If anything,
right.
If the Super Bowl has taught us anything,
So, with the Dolphins, it's, we saw a whole lot of running, a lot more running the ball than I think anyone really anticipated. We talked a little bit yesterday about the, so to speak, weaponization of the injury report and how it's just grown over the years to be this increasingly, less it's just not reliable document. Exactly. So, there's all this talk about how Achane is going to be a game time decision for the Dolphins, and he's banged up and he's hurt. And then he goes out there and he's wide and far the best player for them on the offense. He had 22 carries for 96 yards rushing, and then receiving, he ends up catching more receptions than anyone on the team for 69 yards. Over 150 combined rushing and receiving yards for Achane. If you happen to take his prop on that yesterday and you won some money, text us and let us know, 888-368-1580. But it was just a very disappointing game plan to watch, particularly when you're betting on Tyreek Hill props and you're waiting for him to get that big playoff and it's just not happening.
And part of that, you do have to give credit to the Bills. The Bills were essentially playing the game like if someone's going to beat us, his name is not going to be Tyreek Hill. So you guys figure out how to go from there. That's where my big disappointment with McDaniel comes from, which is didn't seem to have like a second punch for when they took away Tyreek Hill, which you got Achane out there going crazy. You have Jalen Waddle. Did Jalen Waddle forget to play wide receiver sometime I wasn't watching? Like, there are things that you can do to get your offense going, and then maybe those things work to get Tyreek Hill moving himself. But the lack of second punch or the lack of a plan B bothered me a lot.
And I mean, to be fair, I'm not trying to insinuate that, if nothing happened to Tua, then, maybe the Dolphins could have come back and won. I mean, sure, that's a possibility, but the game really seemed
But when you start talking about player props, though, there is a level of we've seen guys play badly and then get some of those garbage time points, garbage time yards. Those things were still in play.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And that's where, I had this whole thing on laddering Tua's passing yards yesterday. And I had it at 275 and 300 plus and 325. And maybe that 325 probably didn't have a chance, but 275 and 300. I mean, Tua had 145 passing yards, little bit more than halfway through the third quarter when the concussion ended up happening. I mean, those props were not completely out of touch, by the time that happened. So, this is a scenario where a significant impact injury did, affect the way that, we bet things. And that's unfortunately the risk that you run whenever you're wagering in, NFL. So it's just one of those things where, we keep it in the back of our head. It is what it is. Got to, move on from it. And, we'll see more about how these teams play. And especially with Miami, I'm not totally sure how they're going to be able to pick up the pieces right now. The quarterback situation without Tua is pretty bleak.
Yeah. Skylar Thompson, he's I think he could be a quality backup, but when you're asking somebody to play maybe 3, maybe 4, maybe 5 games for you, can you depend on Skylar Thompson to win about 50% of those games? Because that's what would have to happen for you to be in anything when Tua comes back. If Tua comes back, by the way, because that's concussion number 3 in as many years. I just don't know. I just don't know. I don't feel great about that either.
Well, and then, what other alternatives does Miami have at this point? I think the most natural name that comes to mind, and, it's not going to generate a whole lot of excitement, but, there is a Ryan Tannehill floating out there somewhere. I would assume they've probably given him a call by now. I personally was hoping for Joe Flacco, but then Keon notified me. I had no idea. I guess that the Colts did a really smart thing and locked him up to be the backup for Anthony Richardson.
Which look, you pray you never need to see him, but he's shown what he can do if you need him to. And I don't think the Colts are in a position where they want to miss the playoffs. And Flacco's shown that if you got the weapons and you've got the team around him, he can get you there. All right, let's get to the text line here, clean some things up. The moist one says, hell yeah, let's go Nickelback. That was the first text, because that's the intro music right there. I'm not a big Nickelback guy, but that's a good riff.
Appreciate that, moist one. Shout out.
That's a fantastic riff.
Animals by Nickelback.
And then he also said, game plan bothered me too. Achane got 29.5 points against me. Yeah, that seems a little bit more personal there, my guy. I don't know. I had a really good game, a good day yesterday. I had James Cook on my fantasy team. Anyway, Golden Domer says, shoot, I must have waited too long to follow your bets. All the baseball bets are favorites again. How much earlier do I need to bet for the White Sox, Rockies, and Angels to become favorites? We've already explained this to you, dude. It's play them straight up, sprinkle them together to make a little parlay action for yourself. I don't know how else. There's no way to explain it any better than that to you. If you don't want to understand, because you don't want to.
I think what Golden Domer is looking for,
is underdog bets, but
12 of them, and that's not how this works.
The show,
never how it
Beat the Book is not a show about getting you the most underdog bet. If you want that, you're gonna have to do that yourself. It's about getting you consistent bets that win you things. Maybe you can make a little 2-3 leg parlay with some of them. Maybe you've got a bet in mind and you look at some of those other bets and go, yeah, you know what? I will add that to my bet and kind of sweeten this pot a little bit to get me a nicer payout. That's what it's there for, Golden Domer. We've explained it to you 3 or 4 times now, and you just refuse to understand. That's you. That's no longer my problem. The fifth letter jumped in and said, boy, I sure had Lady Luck on my side yesterday.
Well, I mean, if you bet ASU, we all did, because I bet
Big
ASU before that guy. It hit 125 on FanDuel like right before kickoff. So I was like, oh, I got to jump on that. So I feel a little bit fortunate and lucky too. And then he says Tua over 4.5 rushing yards, which he boosted that bet. Let me see.
That was
here.
huge. Yeah,
and
17.
and his $50 bet paid him out 118. So good for you, man.
Beautiful.
How do I close this thing now? Yeah, no, good for you, man. That was awesome. And then CK said that was some home cooking. The game clock operator waited 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds to even start the clock in the first place. And then the last text I'm going to read here is the moist one. Riley Leonard for Heisman is a good bet, Golden Domer, which moist one. That's not very nice.
Come on, moist.
That's not very nice. So there you go. Golden Domer wants like a long shot bet to help pay off his mortgage or something. I don't know. We've got Alex Kane of Sport Trade coming up on the other side, and we've got a lot of questions to ask him about, not just some of the games last night. We got Arizona playing tonight. That we're going to try and see if we can get into that a little bit. And of course, some of the new features, some of the ways that Sport Trade is trying to change the game as far as sports betting goes in the city of Phoenix and in Arizona in general. This is Beat the Book, broadcasting live here at Harmon Solar. I'm Keon, that's Dylan, and this is 1580, The Fanatic.
1580 and 99.3 The Fanatic.
Live and local.
Hey, football fans, Michael Vick here. I had an advantage. My legs were a weapon. 6,109 rushing yards, still unbeaten records. That's why I bet at BetUS.com. They offer American sports bettors an advantage. The industry's biggest bonus, a 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. And get expert picks and predictions on their very own BetUS TV. Take advantage. Join me online at BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. BetUS, where the game begins.
Shop the Sherwin-Williams 4-day super sale and get 40% off paints and stains from September 13th through the 16th. With prices starting at $29.39, it's the perfect time to transform your space with color. Whether you're looking to revamp your bedroom, living room, or home office, we have you covered with bold hues, soothing neutrals, and everything in between. Shop the sale online or visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store. Retail sales only, some exclusions apply. See store for details.
Let's say you've got questions. You're looking into solar, but you don't know where to start. Well, Harmon Solar has the answers. Hi, I'm Jeffrey O'Brien, and listen, there's a couple of ways you can go here. One, visit harmonsolar.com, browse around, because right across the page, they got links to all sorts of great information, like frequently asked questions, equipment, tax credits, even testimonials. Or just give them a call, 800-281-3189. Ask them directly. They'd love to hear from you. That's 800-281-3189. Or just go to harmonsolar.com.
My pain is considerable, but that prescription is dangerous.
The side effects of my medicine are worse than my condition.
I'm in recovery. I can't take those pills.
When faced with a health crisis, you shouldn't have to choose between risks.
At the Naturopathic Physicians Group in Scottsdale, our medical doctors are experts in full spectrum care using a natural approach. Patients come in for a variety of issues, including joint pain, chronic conditions, and issues specific to men's and women's health. Our naturopathic doctors can restore pain-free joint function and restore balance in immune, digestive, and hormone systems, which often improves immediate physical symptoms without having you take a bunch of pills. If traditional medicines aren't working, don't you think it's time to start feeling like yourself again? Call Naturopathic Physicians Group at 480-451-6161. That's 480-451-6161. Or go to naturopathicgroup.com.
Hi, guys. Jeffrey O'Brien here. Have you ever gone to harmonsolar.com? Well, you really need to, because everything you ever wanted to know about how solar power can save you big on your monthly electric bill is right there. It's online. Through your phone or through your computer, you can learn about tax credits, the equipment they use, look at how they do things for businesses as well as homeowners, see testimonials from happy customers, and I hear they got a pretty good podcast, too. Check it out. Go to harmonsolar.com. That's harmonsolar.com.
1580 and 99.3 The Fanatic.
Arizona's new home for sports.
We are back. This is Beat the Book. I am Dylan Cohen. Keon Rose is my co-host. He is in the studio with us, and today we have Alex Kane joining us. He is the CEO of Sport Trade. And Alex, are you here?
Yep.
Appreciate you being on with us today. And last week when you came on the show, we talked a little bit about how Sport Trade got started. We talked a bit about some of the features, and if I recall this correctly, the inspiration for Sport Trade it came from pretty much like Robinhood, wanting to give the sports book experience a way to be a bit more transparent and user friendly. Is that right?
That's exactly correct. I remember still remember where I was sitting in university watching the ticker tape, trying to figure out, okay, why is Raytheon trading $130? Why is IBM trading $150? And the more I learned about finance, the less I could try to really find a difference between betting the Arizona Cardinals to beat the Buffalo Bills and buying Apple stock. And that's really where Sport Trade is most differentiated. When you start using our app, every bet you place has a liquid fair value, and you are able to realize that value before and during the game. So that's really what makes us different.
Well, and I mean, we talked about a number of some of the other features that do, allow Sport Trade to stand out compared to a lot of the other guys that are, operating right now in Arizona. We touch base on the concierge level of customer service. We talked about the aggressive pricing and how the odds are generally much better with Sport Trade compared to just about everyone else. We also touched base on the seamlessness of being able to place a live wager, while you're watching a game and not having to worry about some spinny wheel delaying your bet and then your odds changing. Those things just don't happen on the Sport Trade platform. It's designed to give you a better experience. There's one thing in particular that we haven't actually covered yet. I've been foreshadowing it a bit with our listeners this past week. And what I'm talking about is this feature that is called implied probability. And, within Sport Trade, you have this option to toggle your settings so that when you're looking to place a wager on Sport Trade, you don't actually need to work with typical American odds like minus 140 and, plus 2000. You can actually change a setting so that the app expresses these odds as percentage likelihoods. I'm blown away by this feature. No one else does it. I feel like it's extremely forward thinking. Can you talk to us a little bit about kind of where the idea for this whole implied probability setting came from, and how it ultimately works on the app?
Totally. This is honestly, Dylan, the feature that we are all at Sport Trade most excited about. When we set out to build Sport Trade, we wanted to create an experience that really revolved around live betting. And none of us are really sports bettors. And we sort of took that opportunity to think, well, what's the best way to do this and understand it? And my mom and I love talking about and debating politics. And there's a political betting site called Predictive. There's a much larger one now called Polymarket, which your listeners may have heard of. And everything is expressed in probabilities. And the great thing about Sport Trade is that you're able, even if you're looking at our odds in implied probability mode and you are a traditional sports bettor, you can still see the American odds price listed right next to it. But it's even better for folks that may be listening out there and saying, I kind of want to get into this sports betting thing, but I am just so lost when I see the Arizona Cardinals minus 115, LA Rams plus 104. I just don't get it. And that's where the implied probability comes in. Implied probability, basically says you can buy the Cardinals money line at 53% odds. That means for every $53 you put in, you'd get back a total of 100 if the Cardinals win. But then it allows you to actually start thinking about sports betting in a totally different way. Take last week as a perfect example. We all know, unfortunately, the Cardinals lost the game. But what implied probability would allow you to have done, and customers did this on Sport Trade last week, is the Cardinals to beat the Bills on the money line was about 25% odds. That's plus 300 for those that understand sports betting. 25% odds. Well, we had customers buying the Cardinals pregame at 25% odds, course, we know the Cardinals took a double-digit lead in that game. They hit as high as 58% odds, which would allow you to have sold out at 58% win probability, whereas you bought in as low as 25% win probability. So it actually allows you to start to think about sports betting in a totally different way. And we have some really cool visualizations on the app that actually show you, like, oh my gosh, I bought in at 25%. You know, my $10 or whatever I put in is now worth $16 because, or $20 because now it's 58%. Oh my gosh. And it's so easy to sell. And as you mentioned, when you sell out or when you buy in, it's instantaneous. There's no spinny wheel. And those are the concepts we really borrowed from Robinhood.
You know, it's funny you bring up the Cardinals. On the show yesterday, we were doing a little bit of a preview for the Arizona State University Sun Devils. They had just played the Texas State Bobcats yesterday, and that was a scenario where truthfully, Keon and I were a little bit confused because, I mean, you know, look, we're in Arizona, you know, we're naturally going to want the home team, you know, to ultimately win. But we both just didn't quite understand why, amongst all books, ASU was very largely considered the underdog. And I happened to pull up Sport Trade yesterday during the show. I believe it was the pricing that was being offered in New Jersey. But pre-game, Sport Trade had Arizona State University at plus 125 odds. So, you know, that converts to 44% roughly implied probability. And by the way, Sport Trade has an amazing tool for this. You can Google Sport Trade implied probability. It's going to take you right to their website where you can type in any odds you're looking at, and it'll tell you the exact percentage likelihood of that event. So as we were, you know, talking about the game, we noticed that, hey, you know, Sport Trade has a better price on this because I didn't see anyone else that had it really much further beyond plus 100. You guys had it at plus 125. But another way to kind of frame that was, you know, the book believes that ASU has a 44% likelihood to win this game. And then, Alex, I'm not sure if you happen to watch that game, but in the second quarter, and I personally did happen to capitalize on this, the live money line on ASU went above plus 500 when they were down 2 touchdowns. So like I just typed that into the implied probability calculator. Now it's 16% when I initially, you know, could have bought in at 44%. So there's this whole dynamic with the implied probability where you can actually leverage it to do like a partial cash out. Am I understanding that right?
Totally correct. And the greatest thing about Sport Trade is, again, it's great for the implied probability mode. It's great for people that just, hey, I've never really understood this odds thing. And it's also great for people that are experts that totally love American odds for the reason you just mentioned. If that's about 16% odds to your point, so they're down double digits, as you mentioned, or 16% odds. It allows you to think, you know what? I don't even think they're going to win this game, but I'm going to put in $10, $20, $100, whatever, at that 16% odds. I know if it goes to 32% odds, that's double 16. My $100 is now worth 200, so on and so forth. And you can actually trade the game. You can say, well, I think Arizona State's going to score a touchdown here. Buy in at 16%. New probability after they score that touchdown. Now the lead has been slimmed. Now it's maybe 30%, and you sell out. And when you sell out, this is more of an advanced feature, but you don't have to sell your whole bet. You can sell part of your bet. That is a bit more of an advanced feature. You can simply just cash out your whole thing. But this is why we're so excited, because it allows you to think about sports betting in a totally different way. And the best part, we show the implied probability right next to the American odds. Think about the training wheels. You're always going to have those training wheels on. You never have to be like, oh, wait, I kind of don't understand this implied probability thing. What's the American odds price? You can have them side by side. That's the best part about the feature.
You know, what's funny is in your explanation there, I think you're just so in tune with pricing and odds and how all this stuff works. Like the way you described that is exactly the way that it played out. So I end up jumping on ASU live money line at plus 520. They very quickly, about a minute or two later, they get a touchdown. The live line then moved to plus 200, which equates to about 33% implied probability. So that could have been a scenario where, had I been able to leverage Sport Trade instead of, you know, the app that I was using, then there could have been an option there where I could have capitalized on that change in implied probability so that I could then get some money back, perhaps even enough to just make myself whole. So now I don't even have any liability on this game. And then I can just sit back and watch and continue to cheer for ASU. And if they win, great, there's some extra cash in it for me. If not, then at least I had the opportunity to get my money back, and it made the game, more entertaining. So, I mean, there's a lot of really great ways to leverage that feature just to make the whole viewing experience more fun. Alex, I'm very, very curious about how Sport Trade made out yesterday. Obviously we've been talking about this ASU football game. That was going on ESPN, and then over on Amazon Prime, we had the Thursday night football matchup. And, this was a situation where two underdogs at the college level and at the professional level ended up winning. So I'm very curious to know kind of how the handle was split on the NFL game. And, did you guys see a lot of action on ASU Texas State? If you did, how did you guys make out there?
I think when we launch in Arizona, which is, days away at this point, we're so excited. I think we would have gotten a lot more handle on that Arizona State, Texas State game. The most interesting thing about last night, and this is a feature that's available to everyone, even anyone listening, you don't need an account. You don't need to be in any certain state. You don't need to have anything. If you download the Sport Trade app on iOS and you tap on the home screen, you'll see something called the tape. The tape is a real-time feed of every single bet that comes in the Sport Trade system from all states. So we're in New Jersey, Colorado, Iowa right now. We're going to be adding Arizona, in October adding Virginia, and you get this real-time look. If anyone was looking at the tape last night, we posted this on Twitter as well on our Twitter account. We had so much action coming in on Josh Allen's passing yards prop on the over, as well as Tua's passing yards props on the over. We ended up taking over $80,000 of handle on $40,000 on each on Josh Allen's passing over. We have alternate strikes, we call them. So Josh Allen over 230.5, over 245.5, over 260.5. And the same thing for Tua over, I think, 243.5, 258.5, and 273.5. So we have sort of a low, medium, and high, passing yards. We do that for all of our props. And we just saw the action. We had bets as large as $4,000, $5,000 at a time. And when I was looking at the tape last night, I mean, there would be 10, 15, 20 trades in a row where all of the action across the entire site was on those two players. So that was very interesting to see. Players did not make out well. Both of those players ended up on the under. Obviously, Tua got hurt in the third quarter after accruing about 150 passing yards. And it was such a blowout that Josh Allen never really needed to throw the ball. That's another really cool thing about Sport Trade. And those props were even offered in play. And during the game, first quarter, at halftime, people were still flying in, betting the over on both Tua and Josh Allen. So that was really interesting to see. We almost got more volume and handle on passing props than we did on like the total for the game, which is pretty amazing. The handle was split pretty evenly. Dolphins and Bills, I think within game, there was so much action, people buying the Bills at 85% odds, 90% odds, which is minus 900, 95% odds. And I think that tipped it to be very positive for the players. But we had a nice sort of 50-50 flow of people betting first quarter, first half, money lines on both the Dolphins and the Bills. So it was a great game. And if you opened the tape, you would have saw just a ton of action on that game.
Sounds like it was a night where Sport Trade won then, or at least if we're considering those passing props, because I was playing those myself. I was very big on Tua getting over on his passing props. He did so well in week one. And with, the weapons that he has and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, seemed very much like a shoe-in. And that's obviously not the way it went. But even for Josh Allen, I happen to be on that underside for his passing props. So, for you guys to take so much on both of their overs, I mean, you're definitely coming out, on top when it came to those specific markets. I want to touch base with you very quickly on this big football game that we have tonight, because the University of Arizona Wildcats are taking on the Kansas State University Wildcats. in a matchup on Fox. And this is another scenario where, we've got our home state being represented. Arizona does have a pretty promising team this year with Noah Fafita and Tetairoa McMillan, the wide receiver. Alex, are you guys getting a ton of action on this right now, or is it kind of a similar dynamic where because of the lack of a presence in either state, it's just not as popular? How is that playing out so far?
We've had some action on the game. I think there was a bet on Arizona plus 6.5 at 48% odds, which is plus 106. That line has moved to plus 108. That's another nice benefit of Sporttrade. I'm looking at the total for the game is around 60.5. We have, very good prices on both sides of that, as well as for the point spread, which is between 6.5 and 7. Arizona here, I'm looking on Sporttrade, is listed at 30.5%, just plus 223. I don't hate that, especially as something maybe you buy them at 30.5. You sort of see how that first half plays out. And you have that opportunity to look at, take a pause at halftime and see, what's the value of that. I think it's going to be a great game. I think those are two great teams, and I think those are two teams with a realistic shot of getting into the college football playoff. Any team in the top 25 in the first 6, 7, 8 weeks has a real chance. And that's what's going to make this season so much fun. In fact, we even list odds on teams to make the college football playoffs. That's been a very popular futures market for us. So that might be something that when we enter the state that folks may be interested in for Arizona, is that the chance that they make the college football playoffs.
And that'll definitely be something for us to keep an eye on there. Lastly here, Alex, before I kind of wrap things up, I just want to ask the sports bettor here, not the CEO of Sporttrade. What are you looking at to bet in this game? Is there a certain team you're leaning towards, or maybe the over under on the total score? How would you bet this?
Yeah, I always tend to think that the totals are skewed a little bit over because customers love betting overs. And I've never really understood this. Like, the great thing about betting unders is that you're starting the game in a winning position. Now, I know you have to sweat for longer, and there's a chance that the over can hit very quickly, and thus you're not sweating as long. And I get all that. But I never think that unders are particularly bad bet. And I think it's because 70-80% of sports bettors love to see points. And I think this presents an opportunity, especially on a place like Sporttrade, which operates more like a market, where you let the over bettors really drive the price of the under downwards. And you have that opportunity to get in at a lower price. I'll certainly be watching the game. I love college football. Two great programs. I think the total 60.5, 61. Yeah, it's one of those things that you just sort of see how the first quarter plays out. And if those teams, if you have 7-7 in the first quarter, it's kind of like the only chance that game goes over is it goes to overtime, which is a real, which is an under killer, as we know. So that's kind of where I'm leaning. I'm curious where you have it.
The way that I have decided to wager this, I'm taking Arizona to cover just because they had a bit of an underwhelming game last week against NAU at home. Their first week, we saw the potential of the offense, and it's very possible we might get that version of U of A tonight. We'll just have to, wait and see how that goes. But Alex, just wanted to thank you again for being here with us today. And looking forward to reconnecting with you next week and, seeing how things go for Sporttrade. And, we'll, of course, keep everyone in the loop about when that launch date is determined. But it's going to be happening within the next couple of weeks, certainly before the end of the month. Between now and then, you can search Sporttrade, get your account set up, check out the tape and the whale tracker. And Alex, thanks again, and hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you, guys. Have a great weekend, Dylan.
Appreciate that. And we're going to go ahead and take a break here, but we will come back. We're going to chat a bit about this football game that we've got tonight with U of A and K-State. We've got our Diamondbacks playing. There's some other picks that have been posted that we're going to go through. This is Beat the Book. I'm Dylan Cohen. Keon Rose is in the control room. You're listening to 1580 The Fanatic.
1580 and 99.3 The Fanatic.
Live and local.
A new app called Sport Trade is coming to Arizona to cut the vig in half. Search Sport Trade Wales to see the great prices Sport Trade players are getting in real time.
If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP.
Warning, the following ZipRecruiter radio spot you are about to hear is going to be filled with F words.
When you're hiring, we at ZipRecruiter know you can feel frustrated. And you can spend a fortune trying to find fabulous people, only to get flooded with candidates who are just fine. Fortunately, ZipRecruiter figured out how to fix all of that. We find the right people for your roles fast, which is our absolute favorite F word. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/free to try ZipRecruiter for free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Right now at Wendy's, you can get a small Frosty for $1. And literally everyone is going. The car behind you, going to get a $1 Frosty. The car ahead of you, already had one, going for a second. The person who cut you off earlier, you guessed it, $1 Frosty. Maybe it's all a sign for you to go get one. Just don't cut anyone off. No one likes that person. The iconic Frosty for $1, gotta be Wendy's.
Limited time only. Participating U.S. Wendy's, not valid in a combo. Prices may be higher in Alaska, Hawaii, California, and via third-party delivery.
My pain is considerable, but that prescription is dangerous.
The side effects of my medicine are worse than my condition.
I'm in recovery. I can't take those pills.
When faced with a health crisis, you shouldn't have to choose between risks.
At the Naturopathic Physicians Group in Scottsdale, our medical doctors are experts in full spectrum care using a natural approach. Patients come in for a variety of issues, including joint pain, chronic conditions, and issues specific to men's and women's health. Our naturopathic doctors can restore pain-free joint function and restore balance in immune, digestive, and hormone systems, which often improves immediate physical symptoms without having you take a bunch of pills. If traditional medicines aren't working, don't you think it's time to start feeling like yourself again? Call Naturopathic Physicians Group at 480-451-6161. That's 480-451-6161. Or go to naturopathicgroup.com.
A new app called Sport Trade is coming to Arizona to make minus 110 odds obsolete. Search Sport Trade Wales to see the great prices Sport Trade players are getting in real time.
If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP.
Let's say you've got questions. You're looking into solar, but you don't know where to start. Well, Harmon Solar has the answers. Hi, I'm Jeffrey O'Brien, and listen, there's a couple of ways you can go here. One, visit harmonsolar.com, browse around, because right across the page, they got links to all sorts of great information, like frequently asked questions, equipment, tax credits, even testimonials. Or just give them a call. 800-281-3189. Ask them directly. They'd love to hear from you. That's 800-281-3189. Or just go to harmonsolar.com.
If it's local,
we talk about it.
1580 and 99.3.
The Fanatic.
Go off with another great interview with Alex Kane of Sport Trade. We're going to wrap the show up here in just a little bit. Let me jump to the text line very quickly. The fifth letter asked a question that he figured out the answer to all on his own, but I'm going to answer it anyway just because if anybody else had the same question, maybe it might help him. He was asking, what is the app called again? We had Sport Trade CEO Alex Kane on. The app is called Sport Trade. Fifth letter wanted to get in on that, set up the account and all of that beforehand. And hey, I hope you enjoy what's out there. It's coming very soon.
And just something to keep in mind too, this stuff that we're talking about with the implied probability and the percentages. And Alex gave a very thorough, great explanation of how you can look to leverage that setting to take advantage of opportunities to do, partial cash outs whenever you're following, a wager that you've placed and, you're watching the game live and, maybe that's influencing the way that you think things are going to go. You have the capability to do that with Sport Trade. You also have this feature that allows you to really frame the way that you think about, what the book is pricing things at, and you can give more meaning to the odds that, you're seeing instead of just looking at really arbitrary.
Yeah, like minus 115 is something you have to train yourself to know what that means if you're new to sports betting, which I wouldn't say I'm new to sports betting, but I'm still green enough that there's still a moment I have to pause and think really hard about it. And I'm already not great at math. There's just a whole lot of stuff going on there. Like
it's very abstract as a number concept to say, when I bet this much, I get this much, and that tells me what the book thinks. But what do I think compared to that? And there's just like a lot of stuff going on.
And I think a lot of people, sports betting has been around in Arizona now for a few years. And if you're someone that bets fairly consistently, then, maybe after years of, putting a certain dollar amount on -110, like you've just kind of, figured out the pattern in your head of sort of what that payout's going to look like. But there's other implications that the odds offer that are a lot easier to understand and digest when you're looking at it in terms of what does the book think the percentage likelihood for this team to win is versus, oh, the book's got Diamondbacks at -120 today. It'd be a lot easier for most people to look at that as, oh, the Diamondbacks are actually priced with just under a 55% chance to win the game. So it's just kind of a different way to sort of talk the talk. And I think
I think it's just very cool that they have those two things side by side with one another. The Fifth Letter also says the tape feature is pretty dope. I like it, and I will be using it. And he also says, sorry, Alex, I'm coming for your lines. So there we go.
He wants them.
Yeah.
Alex wants all the smoke. So you come ready. Sport Trade will be there for you. And by the way, too, with Sport Trade, for anyone that's listening, there's so much that we're talking about. Some of these concepts get a little lengthy. And I know for me, it's so much easier to piece all this stuff together when you have a visual. So if you have a chance, go online, search Sport Trade. Their website is just loaded with tons of educational content, videos, like very broken down, very easily worded, images and just tools, things to help you understand why you should be placing all your wagers through Sport Trade and, all these different capabilities that they have. And for everything that we've talked about, there's still more. And that's a big reason why Alex is going to continue to join us, because there's just so much more that this platform has to offer that everyone else in town is not doing.
Yeah. And they're really, like a lot of people say this stuff, but like I genuinely see Sport Trade putting their money where their mouth is. They're trying to change the game. They're trying to change what sport betting looks like. Big George says, Dylan, search your inner otter and attack that spicy wing. I wish I had pre-read that one first. Mr. Pink Eye says, how devastated will Keon feel if Jaden Daniels loses to Danny Pennies? I won't be devastated at all. We have the worst secondary in football. The Moist one, pre-read that one. That's not happening. And then Donnie says, do you guys like the Wildcats to cover the 6.5 tonight? Or do you like the over of 60.5, which is funny because that's what Alex was just talking about. So where do you come down on that, Dylan?
So this is perfect segue because my first pick on the picks that I posted. And by the way, if you don't know how to view those, go to 1580thefanatic.com, click on the Beat the Book with Dylan Cohen logo. You can honestly just search in your web browser, Beat the Book Dylan Cohen. It'll be the first thing that pulls up in a web search. So get yourself over to the Beat the Book website. That's where you can see all the picks that I make Monday through Friday. So my first pick for today was for Arizona to cover the spread. When I was writing this, the spread was 6.5. I believe that's exactly where it's still showing right now on FanDuel. You can get it at +100. And the biggest thing for me with this game is just that we've seen like two very different versions of U of A so far. And the biggest question is, which version are we getting tonight? Is it the one that put up over 60 points on New Mexico and we got 300 yards out of, Tetaroa McMillan? Or is it the one that showed up against NAU and like really struggled the whole time, didn't come anywhere close to covering the spread? And it's just one of those things where I got to go with Arizona, trying to step up in the moment. Noah Fafita and Tetaroa McMillan, I really believe they have the opportunity to really claim the sort of crown of being that top quarterback wide receiver duo. We've seen them do it against New Mexico. K-State does not have a very good passing defense, so the conditions are pretty aligned for U of A to potentially have a big passing game, but McMillan's got to get targeted, and he wasn't getting targeted at all against NAU. And so maybe he was sick. I've heard some other stuff. I've heard people saying U of A intentionally tried to throw the game as some kind of misdirection for K-State
which is silly.
game plan. I think that's going off on a limb.
Yeah, I think what more likely happened is NAU just decided McMillan wasn't going to beat him, and maybe Arizona just wasn't quite prepared to pivot that just as much, because I don't think they maybe thought that NAU had the ability to take a player that important away from them. They probably won't make that mistake twice.
If U of A ends up winning the game, then I like the over, because to me that says they're doing it through the passing game, and we're seeing that really aggressive attack that we saw in that first game against New Mexico. If they lose this game and it ends up being very close, which is unfortunately kind of the way I'm leaning towards this, and that's a big reason why I'm doing Arizona to cover, then I think in that context, K-State has found a way to contain Arizona, and that under 60.5 is probably the better way to go. Keon, did you have any thoughts on this matchup? Have you placed your bets on it yet?
I have not. I will say this, though. CK did have a good point, which is he said to Donnie, both teams are Wildcats. So if you're asking, will the Wildcats cover? Yes. One Wildcats team will in fact cover. And Donnie, I'm pretty sure when he said Wildcats meant the Wildcats we know, so the ones from here. I'm gonna take that as that's what Donnie meant. But I'm kind of leaning towards the over, which I know that we were just cautioning against that. But like you're right, Kansas State, that pass defense isn't great. But I do think that Kansas State can get the yards. I think that like we saw with NAU. The Lumberjacks showed that they can absolutely move the football on a team like Arizona. So I don't see why Kansas State wouldn't be able to. I think we could have a game where we hit the over, and maybe even pretty early.
So we'll have to see how that one shakes out. The other pick that I had posted was for the Arizona Diamondbacks to defeat the Milwaukee Brewers tonight. You can take them on the money line. I think you could even look to take them on the run line. Diamondbacks are the hottest hitting team in baseball. The Brewers are among the bottom 3 over the last 30 days in batting average. So when you look at the pitching matchup, Eduardo Rodriguez, he should have a much easier time considering his last 2 outings were against the Astros and the Dodgers, who are 2 of the best hitting teams right now in baseball. So go ahead and put your money on the Diamondbacks to win on the money line, and you can take Arizona to cover the 6.5-point spread. And that is all we got, folks.
Beat the book. That's Dylan. I'm Keon. See you next week.
Breaking news coming in from Bet365, where every nail-biting overtime win, breakaway, pick six, three-point shot, underdog.